Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very, very special episode of 9x90. Today, we have with us Senior VP from New York City's elite banking world. I know many of you are very excited to meet these people. Many of them are amazing mentors that I've grown up with who have completely shaped my career, my mindset, my worldview. And today, you are going to meet one of them. Mr. Steve Beninati is here with us. Him and his wife are absolutely incredible. Today, we're going to dive into why people call him the Kingmaker, and so many other amazing stories, including how he made frozen yogurt an American sensation. Steve, thank you so much for coming on the show.
It's absolutely my pleasure. Thank you. The dog is barking. I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's fine. It's tuned out.
Okay, good. All right. Yes.
No, it's fine. Ladies and gents, we are filming this over the holidays because, like two true workaholics, this was the only time we overlapped for free time. Both of us may have dogs barking in the background throughout this. That is just something that comes with the territory of today's episode. Can I call you Mr. Beninati? I know you told me to call you Steve.
I'll start with a little story. And I tell all of my colleagues and employees, when someone calls me, having employed people for literally my entire career since I'm 21, when somebody calls me Mr. Beninati, I think of two things. A, they want a raise, and B, they are looking for a loan, and they're gradually coming around to that part of the story. So
no, I've just called you Mr. Beninati my whole life, so it's so hard to make the transition.
So let's call me Steve, and let's leave it at that, okay? But that is, I've repeated that hundreds of times.
Fine. Okay, Steve. This is so weird. Okay, I will call you Steve. Got it. All right. So let's start with talking about your frozen yogurt story.
Sure. How it actually started. It's a story that I have told many times. I haven't told it lately. The reality is that in 1975, the United States was in a recession, and my partner and I graduated from college, and we had gone out and tried to get a job, had our resumes. I was looking for something in public relations or something having to do with sales, people, communication, and it just wasn't happening. So as a result, I went back after about 6 months, and I said to my buddy from college, "How are you doing with your job search?" And he said, "Not too well." I said, "Look, why don't we really put our heads together, go back to school, go back to one of our mentors, and talk about opening up a business. I've always wanted to have my own business." So we zeroed in on a concept called frozen yogurt, only because I figured, look, people have to eat, and if we could figure out something to buy with $1, we might be successful. So this was at a point in time where frozen yogurt and frozen yogurt shops did not exist. The reality in that world in 1975 was there was one little store on the corner of John Street and Broadway in the financial district in Lower Manhattan. And they had a little, it was actually a hot dog store when hot dog stores were in vogue. And they had a little tabletop, countertop machine, and they had one little sign that said frozen yogurt, $1. And they put half a strawberry on top of a 4-ounce cup of frozen yogurt. So we saw a line, we got on the line, we bought this, we both looked at each other and said, there's something here, I don't know exactly what it is, but we got to figure this out. We went back into the garbage that night, picked out a bag of the frozen yogurt mix, called the number on the bottom of the bag. It was in Methuen, Massachusetts. No, I'm so sorry. Hood Dairies was the name of the manufacturer of that particular product. And again, we were 21 years old. So I said to them, "I'd like to speak to the director of marketing." I didn't know what I was talking about. And,
No way.
and they got me to a guy by the name, I can't think of his name, but they got me to somebody that was in charge of marketing that product. And I said to them that we were interested in taking that product to the next level. Meanwhile, of course, this was like the first level. This was the first product that they had launched in a store. So um, I said we would be looking to open up what I would call a frozen yogurt shop centered around the product called frozen yogurt, and everything in the store would be centered around or somehow incorporate a frozen yogurt, the frozen yogurt concept. So
Okay.
we investigated like we did what our college mentor told us to do. You know, go out and look at the competition. We went out to the competition, and one day, literally, I'm sitting in a car, and I see on the bottom of the cup of yogurt that I'm eating, Colombo yogurt, Methuen, Massachusetts. At those days, this was 1975, no cell phones. I always carried a roll of dimes with me. We stopped at a phone booth, and I said, I've got to call Methuen, Massachusetts to find out if I can speak to someone at Colombo Yogurt. A gentleman by the name of, I forget his name too, but he identified himself as a director of marketing. I said that we were putting together plans to open up a frozen yogurt shop. And he said, that sounds great. I said, do you have a product? He said, yes, we're looking to launch the product. And from what you already told me in 3 minutes, it sounds like you're the perfect opportunity for us to launch the product.
Yeah.
So we go back, we had no money. And that's another part of the story that I think is important for your audience, that, you know, I learned a long time ago with our marketing teacher that if you have these three elements of what you need to start a successful business. You need a concept, you need money, and you need marketing. The key is if you have two, you can always get the third. So we
Yeah.
had our marketing together ourselves. We had the concept that was coming together. We had no money, but we had someone that helped us write a business plan. And so go back to the beginning of how we got started. It really started with us walking around Lower Manhattan, finding this shop, doing our investigation, coming up with a business plan, and then going out with all of the elements that were necessary to either borrow money, find a location, and find the necessary other components to build a successful business.
Okay. Okay. Now the whole thing where you would spot Kingmakers makes so much sense because you literally lived this yourself. We will dive into the Kingmaker story in a second. But okay, so back to this. So you literally, wow, like bootstrap built this from the ground up. And then how did you go from getting one location in Manhattan, which is like the most competitive real estate location in the world, to all the way across the country?
Okay, so it happened gradually, and I'm always wary when I observe franchisors or chain restaurants or chain businesses providing a service. I'm always wary when someone says, "Oh, I've got one shop, and we're going to have 30 locations in 1 year." Well, that sort of doesn't happen. It doesn't happen that way. So it's an excellent question. We started with one shop. We got a second location literally about 9 months later. And then we were on track to get a third location. My partner and I looked at each other and said, hey, if you're in one shop and I'm in the other, we have to sort of build an organization. So we focused on, okay, building managers in both locations. And then we found a third location in a shopping center called Woodbridge Center in Woodbridge, New Jersey. And we were very young at the time, had very little track record, but we had both locations that were successful. And the mall manager at the time suggested that we provide them with a business plan and how we would build this location and where we would get the financing, et cetera. So the bottom line was they didn't choose us. They selected another organization to build a yogurt shop, and they were falling flat on their feet. 6 weeks before the proposed opening of this shopping center, and for those that know nothing about the shopping center world, they set a date, and you can't miss the date. They said to us, "Can you do this in 6 weeks?" We said yes. We didn't know how. But we just said, yes, we're going to do this. So we went back to our early designers, we went back to our equipment manufacturers, and we said, look, we have an opportunity to be in a regional shopping center that could set us on a different track around the country. We had to do this. Whatever we have to do, pull out the plugs, and we're going to make it happen.
Yeah.
It happened. I remember working literally 24 hours the day before grand opening, no sleep, figuring out how we were going to pull this off. And when the gate rolled up at 9 a.m. the next morning, we were ready for business. So, you know, again, having that positive energy that nothing's going to stop us. We're going to open, and that's what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we did the when my first boss for in the marketing world, we got the contract with Disney to promote their movies.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those things. It was one of those, we're going to make this happen. We did not sleep for 2 days. We had every model dressed, doing the guerrilla marketing campaign, walking the streets of Palm Beach and West Palm Beach, wearing the movie flyers as ball gowns. Yeah, so I get it. Yeah, the not sleeping for rolling it out to make it happen. Okay, so you really walked every step of the entrepreneur's path. And that's why I remember you said one time at so for those of you who don't know, I met, not Mr. Beninati, I met Steve. And sorry, I know it's going to take me forever to break the habit. I met Steve.
Wait, how much do you need? How much do you need? Or
what? No, stop. I don't need a loan. I don't work for you anymore. Okay, so I met Steve and Sandra when in Beach Haven, which is the small vacation town in New Jersey. A lot of like New England born celebrities go there. A lot of Wall Street elite executives. That's where they vacation. That's where our families all vacation. His wife, Sandra, bought this gorgeous bed and breakfast and turned it into the most amazing place. Everyone has to go there. Every time I'm in town, no matter what country I'm flying in from, we stop there to eat. Like it is just, it's absolutely amazing. And they have a contract with the only wine venue in the entire country that makes wine without the preservative that I'm allergic to. So the only place that I can drink wine in the entire United States is at his restaurant because it's that fresh and pure. Anyway, so what was I lost track of where I was going with this.
So I just want to add something respectfully. Yeah. You know, the common misnomer is that we are a B&B bed and breakfast. We are not a B&B. We are an inn and restaurant. And the distinction between a B&B and an inn is that an inn serves food and oftentimes does breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We do breakfast for our inn guests. We have 5 guest rooms, and we certainly do dinner, and we do quite a bit of banquet business as well. So, you know, a B&B, frankly, for those out there that are thinking about getting into the hospitality business, a B&B is a very simple concept. An inn and restaurant are far more complicated and much more demanding, and obviously can be much more rewarding if you're successful.
Sorry, yes, correction. Yeah, so they have, it's not B&B, they have the finest dining in the entire town or the entire island. I don't know, but it's if you want to go to the classiest place to eat the freshest food, their head chef picks up fresh caught fish and scallops that were literally caught that morning, brings them to the restaurant on his way to work. So you're eating the freshest food that was literally swimming like just hours before. It's unparalleled.
The scallops are actually caught right down the other side of Long Beach Island in Barnegat Light, and that they provide fresh scallops to the entire Northeast. But let me also, we're sort of off the topic of the yogurt business because you asked a very important question. How do we go from one store to stores across the country? So may I want to get back to that for your viewers. Is that okay?
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's what my point was going to be, is you had said one time that a good leader makes more leaders.
Yeah, very important.
And so that's where you're getting to with the story now.
Yeah. We built one store back in 1976, and then several more stores until we had a chain of 10 shops And in 1981, another interesting twist from college, we had a very good friend of ours who had gone to law school and was practicing in a firm that was a franchise law attorney. And he brought the concept to us about the possibility of becoming a franchisor. So we investigated.
Ah,
We became a franchisor, starting to franchise our concept to a select group of people. Now that's a whole nother, that could be the subject of a whole separate podcast, because there's I have quite a bit to say about franchising. But the reality is, our first franchisee was a family that we opened in Hunt Valley, Maryland, at a shopping center. And I should also mention that at that point in time, the shopping center industry was in its heyday.
yeah.
It's no longer the case these days, because shopping centers are on the decline. We probably have about a third too many regional shopping centers out there. But the point is, we were involved in a wonderful organization that was called the Rouse Company at that point in time. And once you're successful in one or two of their locations, they want to pop you into a variety of different locations around the country. So we gradually expanded with them, and then we went to in Las Vegas every year. There is a convention, and it's called the ICSC, the International Council of Shopping Centers, and that's where the deals, so to speak, are made for regional shopping centers around the country. So we gradually went from 10 stores to 20 stores, to the point that we were opening up many locations each year, building a team, of course, an internal team that was out there, making the deals, assisting with the financing. Some of our locations were downtown locations, but we expanded rather aggressively. And in 10 years, from 1980 to about 1990, we opened up 300 locations in 30 states. So we were successful.
That's wild. What did you study in college? Or this was after business school?
No, I never went to business school. And for those folks out there that are thinking about it, go, because I did not. So I was a psychology major, and I minored in business. But the reality was that I was sort of, since the time I was 12 years old, I always had a knack for business. And whether it be, shoveling snow, polishing cars, taking care of gardens, that was always my forte. I knew how to sell.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, because so I was studying medicinal and biological chemistry when I worked for you. And you told me you're not built for a life in a biochemistry lab. You're built for the entrepreneurial world. And I was like, what does that mean?
Wow. I have a great memory. I don't remember saying that, but so true.
Oh my gosh. No, okay. So one time when I worked at your wife's restaurant, we were still pulling tips. I want to do the Kingmaker story now, if that's okay, now that we finished the.
Okay.
So we were all still pulling tips, and the dishwasher, the person who washed dishes for the Sunday brunch, just didn't show up the one day. And we ran out of dishes. There was nothing left. And all of the other servers were like, well, I'm not washing dishes. And I looked at them and I was like, you guys, we pull tips. They were like, so? And it was like, it doesn't matter who washes the dishes. We split the tips regardless. So if no one washes them, none of us are making any more money because we don't have dishes. And they were like, you're going to wash the dishes? And I was like, yes. And I took off my tie and my professional thing, had a t-shirt underneath, and I started washing dishes. And at this point, everyone was speaking about how Steve was the kingmaker. Like, there were people who would literally drive from New York City, find a place to rent for the summer just so they could work at his wife's restaurant, just so they could get like 10 minutes to talk to him. And all I knew was that he was some big shot Wall Street executive, but everyone came down to be a server.
That's not true. All right.
But anyways, they wanted, at this point, you were the big shot Wall Street executive. Everyone wanted their 10 minutes of talking with the kingmaker. I was like, oh, I'm never going to get to talk to him. I don't do anything special. I'm studying science. Like, I'm studying biochemistry. There's zero overlap here. So I jump in to be the dishwasher the one morning, and I come into work in the evening, And there was a note from you that said, "You're type A, just like me. People built like us make the people who are built like us make the world run," or something like that. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, you guys, I got a note from the guy who like decides who the Kingmakers are."
Yeah.
And there was one kid who had been like a surfer with us that summer, and he literally like every single shift when we had like 3 minutes to spare, he would be asking us like in every break and every time we came in, "Hey, look at my resume again before I give it to him. Look at my resume again." He edited that thing and proofread it, printed it off, I don't know, like 30 times before he finally showed it to you. So I show him, "I got this note from you." And he was like dying with envy. He was like, "That's not fair. That's not fair." And it was like, "Well, go wash the dishes." So he eventually got his moment with you. But then you pulled me aside and you were telling me how I was not built for the biochemistry lab. I was built, you asked me what I was studying, and I said it was biochemistry, and I'm going to try to find a cure for this certain type of epilepsy in the biochemistry lab one day. And you said, "You have an entrepreneurial mindset. You're type A. You see a problem, you know how to fix it, you do what it takes to fix it. Those types of people, we change the world." You said, "I'm type A," because I was like, "What's type A?" You're like, "I'm type A. We change the world. We know how to solve problems, and you're built for the entrepreneurial world." It's like, okay. So I put this in the back of my mind.
Wow.
Fast forward a couple of months, and I get the invitation to join the startup, which became the keystone to my entire career. It was the guerrilla marketing company that I got pulled in to work on the projects with Porsche, Whole Foods, Target, and Disney. And those 4 successes led me to be selected as the youngest Apple sales manager in Italy.
Wow.
Like, so if the dishwasher had never shown up and you had never given me that pep talk, we would not be here right now.
Wow. I'm privileged to have influenced you as much as you say I have. So that's wonderful.
But I don't know if you realize how many young people's lives you changed, because you'd pop down and you would tell us something that just like completely shattered our worldview, and then we'd go off in a completely different direction because you knew so much more about the world. But I didn't realize all of this background with building the yogurt company from the ground up. I just knew you were a Wall Street executive at that point. But
Well, all right. And look, what goes around comes around. I was also very fortunate to be influenced by wonderful teachers and neighbors. And I'll tell a quick story. When I went to college for the first time, I thought I wanted to be a civil engineer. I went to a college that my dad went to, called the Polytechnic Institute of Brooklyn. And I was there one semester, and I basically knew that I was not material to be a civil engineer.
Yeah.
I didn't have a clue about physics and chemistry and calculus, and it was just not who I was.
Yeah.
So I said to my dad, "Look, this isn't working out. I gotta do something else." He said, "Why don't you go talk to Dr. Norstrand, who was a physician that lived 2 doors away from me in Brooklyn." And I knocked on the door one day, completely cold, and I said, "My dad thought it would be a good idea for me to speak to you. I'm looking for some career direction." And he said, "Absolutely, come on in." And we spoke for probably 2 hours. And it was one of the more meaningful conversations that kind of set straight the fact that, you can go down a road, and if it's not the right road, you got to go to another road. So that's something that's an entrepreneurial trait, by the way, folks. So I decided that I would go to St. John's University, study liberal arts, whatever that means, and figure it out along the way. Along the way, by the way, I had 3 part-time jobs, and I was always sort of like working and juggling and figuring it out, saving money, and thinking someday that I would have a business.
Oh, okay. All right. So the entrepreneurial thing was always in the back of your mind from the get-go.
Correct.
It was not in the back of my mind.
And the financial services element of my life was a complete fluke. We'll get into that later if you wish, but I never thought in a million years that I would go from 16 years of the frozen yogurt business, flying around the country, opening up stores, running people in the field, negotiating deals, never wearing a suit and tie, by the way. And suddenly I'm in a world where everyone is wearing a suit and tie. But
Oh my gosh.
yeah, you continue asking questions.
No, go ahead. No, no, no. I want to know this transition. I
All
need
right,
to,
so
I think everyone wants to know this transition.
the transition occurred after I said the shopping center industry was growing in leaps and bounds, and we were at we were on the edge of the expansion. Well, around 1990, something happened in the world of commerce. And for those of you that perhaps weren't even around in 1990, in 1990, mothers stopped taking their baby carriages to shopping centers during the day, and they went back to the workforce. So the shopping center industry started to decline. This is way before the internet. And as the shopping center industry declined, we saw traffic dwindle in many of the, let's call it, tertiary locations around the country. So we had at that point, we had these 300 locations, many different concepts, not just frozen yogurt, and about a third were wildly successful, about a third were marginally successful, and about a third were not successful, meaning they were losing money.
Yeah.
And I thought, it wasn't fair to these franchisees, many of whom were family members who had pooled their money together and decided to, put 60, 80, $100,000 cash into a concept called Everything Yogurt. And I said they needed help. And my partner and I, to make a long story very short, we had a distinct difference of opinion of how we should help these people. So at that point in time, I said, you know what? I think it's time that we go our separate ways. I was 37, 38 years old. It was time to do something else. So we went ahead and went on a very long road of separating ourselves, even though we had a long and complicated buy-sell agreement. It didn't work as quickly and as easily as I guess either one of us would have suggested it would have. And I was on the outside looking in. Let's put it that way. I don't want to be negative. I'll make the long story very short. So I'm literally sitting one day at my mother's kitchen table in Brooklyn, trying to figure out what I was going to do for the rest of my life. I'm looking through, again, way before the internet, I'm looking through the Sunday New York Times, and I see a block ad from a company called Smith Barney Shearson, and they were looking for entrepreneurs. So I said, okay, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not really doing anything. I'm looking for another business. I knew I was never going to work for anybody. I had never worked for anyone since I was 18. And I go down to the Roosevelt Hotel in New York City to one of these events. I take my resume, I throw it in the basket. I sit in the last aisle of the auditorium, and I'm listening to people walking across the stage, and they're talking about the relationship between people that call themselves financial advisors, financial consultants, and the stock market and the bond market. And it was like I had no interest in it whatsoever. I leave the auditorium. I said to myself, this is not for me. The next morning at 9 o'clock, their internal recruiter, his name was Richard Dick, I'm not making that up, he called and said, we have to meet. I said, really? Wow, that's pretty interesting. I said, I don't think we have to meet. What do you want to talk about? He said, you're the kind of person we're looking for. I said, wow, that's pretty interesting, because I don't think you're the type of organization that I'm looking for. I could never work for anyone. Yeah. Please come down. Let's make an appointment. I said, all right, give me a date in a couple of weeks. He said, no, we're meeting tomorrow. I said, okay. I go down to 388 Greenwich Street. I go into an office building. I've got my blue suit on, my one and only blue suit. And I walk in, and he's talking about all of the attributes of becoming a financial advisor. And he said, it seems like after an hour's worth of conversation, you've got all the elements that you need to be successful. And I said, okay, what's the next step? He said, well, we'll give you one of these academic tests, and then a test that's sort of, test your personality, and then you'll go through a training program, and then we'll take it from there. I said, okay, let's go through the test. I go through the test. I go through with flying colors, and then I come out and I said, who am I going to work with? Because I'm not easily managed. I never worked for anyone. He said, I want you to meet this guy. You'll love him. I go into a building on One Penn Plaza, 34th Street and 8th Avenue, and I meet this gentleman by the name of Al Kirshner, and he played it perfectly, because I'm sitting in his office waiting to be interviewed. Here I am, I'm the yogurt king. I've been successful. I've been in my own business, and he basically ignored me. And people are walking in and out of his office, phones are ringing, and I'm sitting on his couch watching this action. It was all intentional. And then about maybe a half hour later, I said to him, so Al, when do we start the interview? He said, interview? You want to be interviewed? I don't, what does that mean? And I said, well, are we going to shut the door? He said, yeah, you want to shut the door? Shut the door. We shut the door, and he plays it really cool. Because again, sometimes when you're trying to sell something, you want to pull it back and allow people to want it a bit more.
Yeah.
Classic marketing.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, we talked, I listened. I said, let's give it a try. I said, let me ask you a question. How do you know I'm going to be successful in this business? He said, well, let's give it 3 months and then I'll know. And in those days, to be successful in our business, you had to open up 30 accounts in 90 days, and you had to pass something called a Series 7 exam.
Mm-hmm.
You were given one chance. It wasn't like, when you're in law school and you want to take the bar, you're given as many chances as it takes. One chance, you had to study, and you go from there. I had to go through a 2-week training program, and I did all that. And I still wasn't really convinced that this was for me. But I did it. I built a business, now 32 years, a very successful business that I really enjoy. So, for those out there that are thinking, they don't really know what they want to do in their career, and you're going down a path that may not feel right in the beginning, be a little persistent, be tenacious, and you might be surprised.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. Because I kept telling people that I wasn't a marketer for I don't know how many years. It was like, they were like, what are you doing? And I was like, well, I'm just doing what I learned in, like, when I was studying neurobiology and combining that with human anatomy and physiology. They're like, you realize that's called marketing? And I was like, I don't think it is. Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. That's funny.
So that's the transition story. And it did work out. Did I ever miss the frozen yogurt business? Not really. I missed the people that I worked with. We had a staff of 40 people.
Yeah.
And life moved on.
Yeah. Wild. Because I remember the first few times you mentioned the frozen yogurt business as like something you had done, and I just thought it was something you did like with a client for like a year or something. I didn't realize it was like your entire youth.
Part of my life. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. That's wild.
Yep. So probably the next part of the interesting story is, how did we find this building that we now call the Gables Historic Inn and Restaurant?
Oh my God, yes.
Okay, so I grew up in Brooklyn. For me, going to the beach meant going to Coney Island, Reese Park, Jones Beach, Fire Island. When I heard people talk about the Jersey Shore, I really didn't really understand where the Jersey Shore was. And one day I met someone that had grown up in Jersey City, and she told me that her parents had just built a home in a place called Manahawkin, which is off the coast of Long Beach Island. Knew nothing about it. We went down. I enjoyed it, went to the beach, looked around Long Beach Island, thought, wow, this is a pretty cool place. I knew nothing about it. and we went for a ride, and we saw all of these very small, what was called, I don't know if they use the term now, raised ranches, a small 2-bedroom little ranch house.
Yeah.
And I looked up and I said, wow, someday, maybe if we ever had the opportunity to get a little ranch house like this, that would be a very cool thing to do. So to bring that story to full circle, this was my previous wife. We did get married. We did have a few dollars back in 1980. And in 1980, there was also a recession. Funny that, I mentioned recession twice in this story. So during this recession, a lot of builders were going bankrupt. And there was a building that was for sale that was half finished in a place called Loveladies, New Jersey. And this is a very important element of the story, because if it wasn't for the home in Loveladies and what we did, there would be no gables. So we made a deal with the landlord, with the builder, Ed Zorn, who was about to file bankruptcy. And it was a lucrative deal for him and for us. And we ended up building this house. And the first mortgage, for those that complain about mortgages of 8 and 9% these days, our first mortgage rate, and I'm not making this up, was 12.5%.
Yeah.
And I just said, you know what? It's going to be fine. We're going to make it work. We'll refinance someday when the interest rates come down. And that's exactly what happened. And this was a home that we clearly could not afford. So we had to rent for the summer for 12 weeks or 16 weeks. And then we used it on weekends other years, other months. And that went on for a long, long time. And then of course, the climate changed. The country came out of recession. We went into the boom years of 1994, 95, 96, and the property values on Long Beach Island went sky high.
Yeah.
And those were the days that banks, this is prior to the financial crisis in 2005, 2006, those days banks were throwing money at people. And you could do something called a no-doc loan or no-doc mortgage. So we were able to get a mortgage, actually 2 mortgages on that home. And that's where the money came from to buy this building that was basically falling apart, and was a place that was owned and operated by a couple from Italy, and it was called the Green Gables. And it was a charming small restaurant, but it needed a tremendous amount of work. And I just said, Sandra, my wife, currently now 27 years married, very happily married, as a matter of fact, and we saw the building, and I said, if we buy this building, she wanted to buy the building and restore it. And I said, well, if we're going to restore it, it's got to be something that Long Beach Island doesn't have. Again, entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
So everyone's going to the right. I'm always looking to go to the left. The island did not have an elegant tablecloth, candlelit restaurant. It had a lot of restaurants that were sort of serving mediocre food with a big bar, and our type of restaurant, a New York City type of cuisine, did not really exist. There was maybe one restaurant that was open back in 1990, 2004, 2003, 2002. It was called Blue. It was in Surf City. And it was elegant, and it didn't last because they couldn't make it. This island is very seasonal. So the point of the matter is, to move the story along, we bought the building, we made a deal, everyone was happy, and the moon and the stars were definitely lined up. Why do I say that? The owners, Rita Rapella and Adolfo DiMartino, when my wife and I took the tour in January, and it was a very cold morning on a Sunday, and the restaurant wasn't open. We're walking around the building, and my wife said to Rita, by the way, when is your birthday? And her birthday ended up to be my wife's birthday, June 2nd. And then she said, well, when is Adolfo's birthday, and Adolfo's birthday was November 7th, my birthday. Now, just think about that. What are the chances of you
Oh my God.
meeting two people that had the exact same birthdays as you do? So,
Yeah.
so right away, my wife said, "This is meant to be somehow or another." We made the deal. We knew we had to be open the following um, summer. So we fast tracked the whole building process. That's a whole nother story. We got the money together. We had a bit of it, but we really needed our budget to build a location literally went 3x over the original budget.
Oh, I believe it.
And if we
Yeah.
didn't have the ability to reach back and get loans from banks quickly, there would be no Gable. So we ended up opening in 2006 in June, and here we are, 2024, having completed our 19th successful year. Now, remember, entrepreneurs out there, not every year is a successful year. We had to really struggle for the first 10 years and then sort of break even for the next 5. When I say struggle, I mean put your own personal money back into the business, break even for 5 to be extraordinarily successful in the last 4. And that sometimes is the way that businesses go. And you've got to be willing, and you've got to have the staying power, and you have to have perhaps the ability to sustain yourself financially with another gig, whether it's a partner's gig or significant other or whatever. So there's lots of ways of making businesses work. We just never said we would ever give up.
I remember one summer, your wife is she's just a queen. One summer, for those of you who have never seen her, like you have to stop by the Gables one night for dinner and you'll see her. She looks like she's literally walking off the cover of like a Vogue photo shoot, and she's running a high-end restaurant for the night. Like, yeah, women in their 30s envy what she looks like, and she's in her what, 70s? Like there are no beauty treatments we have found to be able to replicate what she
That's
does.
a very good guess.
But so the one night someone says to her, they like in a very snarky tone, they were like, "What are you doing? Like this just seems like it's way too much. Like why didn't you just let the building die?" And she's like, "Well, that's why I own it and you don't." And, and she just like put them in their place so quickly because they were like trying to like put her down for choosing to take the Gables and turn it into this gorgeous oasis in Beach Haven. And she in 2 seconds leveled them and was like, "Well, that's why I'm here and I own this and I've built it into what it is and you don't." And she just walked away. And I was like, oh my God. Like,
the root of that story, and
Yeah.
it goes back to being thick-skinned
Yeah.
and entrepreneurial, is that this is a small town.
It
You
is.
know Beach Haven as well as I do.
Oh my
And
gosh.
the folks in Beach Haven, especially the locals, they don't necessarily embrace change, and they certainly don't embrace people from out of town, the big city, New York City, coming down here, buying a building, putting a lot of money into it, and then suddenly making something that is different.
Oh.
So there was a lot of, I don't know if there was jealousy or there was a lot of animosity. Certainly, we had to go in front of the review board and get a variance on the seating, on the number of seats that are used in the restaurant, et cetera, et cetera. It was a lot of energy, and most people would have given up and or thrown the towel in and said, this is just never going to work. But again, we were true to form, and I just kept saying, we're not going to give up. We're going to make this happen, not knowing at all of whether or not the community was going to embrace us. So
I didn't even realize that.
Sorry?
I didn't even realize I never thought about.
Yeah. So that's why sometimes people come in and they may, it's very easy to be critical, and it's very difficult oftentimes to be complimentary. So we don't allow the criticism to get to us at all.
I think for those of you who do not know Beach Haven, it's a very unique culture because my siblings and I joke that we only go back home to Beach Haven for 72 hours at a time because so we grew up on the opposite side of the coin where because we were born and raised there, like when I go home, I'm under a microscope the entire time. And the women there joke that or the kids that grew up in my generation, we joke that the moms there have a hive mind, like they have they're part of a beehive because I could not go anywhere on the island without my mother knowing exactly where I am at all times. Like Beach Haven Library, the coffee shop, surfing. I'm in the middle of the ocean and she knows exactly which beach I'm surfing at and I don't have my phone on me. Like, so I get it from the other side of like I'll walk into a store and if I don't buy something, they're calling my mother and saying, well, why didn't your daughter like the scarf? What was wrong with the scarf? Just like, and it's like, oh my God, can I be anonymous for 2 seconds? Like there's
Not,
zero
not in
anonymity
detail. Not in detail. Everyone knows what everyone else is doing.
Oh my God, all the time, all the time.
Typical small town America. But in any event, here we are 19 years later. And I'll also add, this is, we've gotten so many accolades and we've won quite a number of prizes. We have a great staff. We empower the staff. We have had an executive chef, Richard Dima, who has, he actually worked for Rita and Adolfo way back. And then when we took over, things obviously changed. And he lasted about a year and said, you know what, maybe it's time to find some greener grass. And we said, we totally get that. Go out and see what's out there. And a couple of years went by. We had hired other people, no one quite as talented as Rich. And then one day he came back and spoke to Sandra and said, hey, I think I would like to have my gig back, but I don't want any responsibility. I just want to cook.
Okay.
And we said, you are not a cook. You're an executive chef. You are a decision maker. And if you come back, you'll come back as an executive chef and we will make it work. And that was literally 16 years ago. So he has been with us for 16 years. He has full reign of the kitchen. My wife is a good cook. I am not. I can hardly make oatmeal. And, the menu changes regularly. We have what I would like to say an eclectic menu. We're known for our very special cuisine. And the fact that we are a romantic tablecloth restaurant. So Open Table, the booking system, last year they have a voting process, and from all of their restaurants around the entire country, we were voted in the top 100 restaurants for the most romantic experience, and that occurred right before Valentine's Day. So that opened a whole new world for younger people. Look, we're expensive. I don't make any excuses about that. We are expensive. And a lot of folks come here once a year for a special occasion, whether it be Valentine's Day or a birthday or an anniversary. We're not the kind of place where people can oftentimes afford to come on a regular basis. There is a crowd out there in Beach Haven that, have the ability to do that, and that's wonderful. But for the most part, we are one of those special places that people come to enjoy a special evening, a special experience.
And then for some of us who work in the lucrative tech space, it's the mandatory stop every time we go home because it is the highest quality food that you will find in Beach Haven.
Right.
Hands down.
Thank you. So what else is on your mind that might help your audience?
I think that we hit everything.
Wow. We call that success? Do we call that a success?
I think we call it a success. I think we call this a holiday win.
A holiday win. Great. So I'll tell. So one quick story just from yesterday, from last evening, and again, it's all about making your business, whatever that business is, create successful and special experiences. And it doesn't matter, which end of the spectrum you're on. It doesn't matter what service or what element of the hospitality industry you're in, or whether it's technology or whether it's retail. Provide someone with a special experience, so when they walk out, they say, wow. So we don't really have that many. This is not New York City, so we don't have that many people dining by themselves. Last evening, we had a relatively robust evening, and I saw one young lady sitting by herself on the porch, and I thought for sure that she was with someone. So I said, "Are you with someone?" And she said, "No, I'm by myself." I said, "That's so nice. Thank you for coming in and supporting us, on a sleepy Friday night between Christmas and New Year's." And she said, "Look, I'm from out of town, where New York City, and I knew I had to come here to experience this." Now,
Oh my God.
that was a huge compliment. And on the other side of the restaurant, there were 6 people who told me that every year they come here. It's 3 couples, high school friends. I can appreciate that because I do the same with my high school friends and their significant others. They come here every year for 6 years to have their holiday meal. That was so
Oh
nice.
my God.
So I joke with them, and I always tell them that there's never any rush, and they can have that table for the rest of the evening, and da da da. So make that business, whatever business you're in, make it extremely special. And the other thing that I guess is special about the fact, other than the food and the ambiance and the candles, etc., is that the owners are walking around saying hello. Ask yourselves, how many times have you gone to a restaurant, whether it be a special restaurant or a diner, and had the owner or someone that identified themselves as the owner come over and say hello? One evening, we're big fans of Daniel Boulud, the restaurateur, who runs Restaurant Daniel on Park Avenue, and he just opened up another facility down on 42nd Street in the Vanderbilt building. We're in the restaurant. He had just opened the Vanderbilt location, and I love everything about it. And all of a sudden, Chef Daniel comes over and says hello. I was thrilled. Me, I own a restaurant.
Yeah.
I've been in business since I'm 21. And I was like, I should have stood up. I shook his hand. I said, "Thank you so much for being so kind to come over and say hello." That was such a special evening. So he asked me what I did for a living, and I told him, and he said, and I'm with, of all people, the chef from the Gables. So he said to us,
No way.
"Would you like to see my kitchen?" I was like, of course. So we took the tour, and it was just it's such a special evening and a special experience. So Restaurant Danielle, Park Avenue, I believe it's 64th Street, the Vanderbilt downtown on 42nd Street, and you'll absolutely have a very special experience. Fine French cuisine.
I do have one more question.
Sure, go right ahead.
The alligator skin. I think that's something that I've been struggling with lately. Because in Beach Haven, when people are cutthroat or they're giving me like these snippets or these bites, I know it's usually out of love. Like when they're nitpicking what I'm wearing or my makeup choices or things like that, I know that it's usually out of love. Most of them are retired models or their mothers were models or whatever. But this year was the first time where I had just like vicious hatred, crazy smear campaigns against me, where someone decided they wanted to ruin my reputation with a fabricated sex scandal with someone decades older than me.
Okay, so
and that like blew me out of left field. Panic attacks, like, yeah.
So first order of business is, I don't believe anything I read on the internet.
Yeah.
I fact check, and I use legitimate sources. If I read something that was bogus, or someone actually said something that was not complimentary, I'll be positive. I would just say, look, they got to be jealous, or they have to have a poor self-concept that they have to attack us, or they have to attack me, or they have to attack my wife, or they have to attack the business. People come in, it's very difficult to make people happy in the restaurant business. We get 5-star ratings 98% of the time, but 2% of the time, someone might come in, they might give us a 2-star rating. Someone came in and they said a few evenings ago that our mussel dish, the mussels were tough. You know what? Everyone's entitled to their opinion. In the restaurant business, it's very simple. Let me get you another appetizer, and we'll make it work. As I said earlier, one of my titles is the Director of Happiness. My job is to make sure that everyone walks out happy. So if somebody attacks you for whatever reason, assume that they're either, speaking from some sort of jealousy or poor self-concept, or they're fabricating something for a reason that may be unknown to you right now. But don't take any personal attacks personally.
A lot of people who were privy to the originator of the fabrication said, well, clearly she's jealous because of but still, like, watching all of these people quickly believe her side without, like, even just thinking logically, like, that I think hurt more, seeing all of my fake friends choose to believe this nonsensical thing.
Yep.
And that's what I've been struggling, I think, with healing most from, is the secondary and tertiary waves of people that I thought were my friends that, like, left and then came back.
I've heard this expression. It's worth repeating. A true friend that you've had all of your life, they don't really leave and come back. Oftentimes acquaintances might leave, or might somehow lose relationship with you. But a true friend, someone that you can call up and talk to in the middle of the night about anything, they typically don't roll away.
Yeah, that's true. One mentor was saying that she did me a favor because right before the biggest career break with this book and the international speaking tour and everything, she flushed out every fake friend that would have sat next to me for the awards and left after. Yeah. Do you have any books that you read to kind of, like, calm down and decompress when, like?
Well, I love music.
Yeah.
And I love seeing live musicians, all types of musicians. So we go to a lot of shows. We love theater. We love opera. We love rock and roll. The last book that I read that I had, it was an entrepreneur's book. City Winery is a great venue in New York City. They turned one venue on Hudson Street into a group of about 12 or 15 locations around the country. They manufacture their own wine, and they're a great venue for live acts. So Michael Dorf is someone that I became aware of, and he wrote a book. And one year, for my clients, I called him up and I said, Michael, I'm going to give your book to a lot of my better clients, and I'd like you to sign it and make it special for them. Now, again, I didn't really know Michael Dorf. Okay.
Yeah.
He took my phone call. I explained what I wanted to do, and I got 25 or 30 books, put them in a shopping bag, 2 shopping bags, and I said, where is it a convenient place for you to meet? He said, well, meet me in Rockefeller Center at our location. I get there in Rockefeller Center. I've got the books. I've got a Sharpie, and I've got a list of people that I want him to identify and write, their name and say, happy holidays. And he did it. Like, I'm thinking to myself, all right, it's a tall order, but he did it. And to that, from that moment on, I've supported his organization in a lot of different ways. Member of the wine club. I go to a lot of different charitable organizations that he supports. And so you asked the question, what books do I read? I like to read business books. I like to read books that are written by other entrepreneurs, and I certainly like to read books, books written by rock and roll artists that I enjoy. So there is a book by the name of Life that was written by Keith Richards, which is it's a fascinating book about his life.
Yeah.
So if you have, those are the kind, I don't read novels. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I rarely read novels. I found like real estate, business law, entrepreneur books. Those are usually what I read to calm down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they activate the logic side or the numerical side of your brain.
Right. Right. And I'm always thinking about my business, about my clients, about this business, about our employees, trying to support, how we're going to support them, how we're going to make tomorrow better than yesterday. But I will say this: the other night on PBS, there was a show about the Library of Congress gives out an award every year to artists, and this year it was Elton John and Bernie Taupin, and it was held in, I think it was the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. We stumbled on it. We hadn't expected to find it. We stumbled on it right at the beginning, and for 2 hours, I was like, I'm a multitasker, so I can't really sit still too often in front of a TV, which I don't enjoy for the most part. For
Yeah, I
two
know that.
hours, my wife and I sat there, and I was like blown away because I love Elton John. I've seen him 50 times, and he is, an artist that I have so much respect for. And to see him and Bernie Taupin, the lyricist, talk about their relationship going way back, it was just, for me, I didn't think about anything. The point is,
Yeah.
in. So that's my way of relaxing.
Yeah. Oh. All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. For those of you who are tuning in, I hope you enjoyed our quick coffee chat, and you will see his story in the book very soon. And I will see you all back online after the holidays. Thanks so much.
Good night. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks.